Hello sports fans, welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be giving my Week 3 college football predictions. So last week I had a record of 20-3, and that brings my record on the college football season to 42-5. Beginning this week's games, we've got Florida State visiting Boston College. So this game should not be very close. Florida State has looked like one of the best teams in the country, and so far this season they are averaging 55 points a game in 2 games. Boston College isn't very good. They lost to Northern Illinois and barely beat an FCS team in Holy Cross last week. Florida State should not need to worry about Boston College this week, and I've got them getting the win 45-10, but they do need to make sure they don't get looking ahead to next week's game when they visit Clemson. But Florida State with the dominant victory. Moving on, we've got Penn State visiting Illinois. So this could be one of the better games this week, and I think this game could be good, but Illinois has not been that good to start the season. They lost to Kansas and barely beat Toledo. Now, Illinois has struggled to stop the run in their 2 games so far, giving them 224 rushing yards per game, and that plays right into the favor of Penn State, who's a team that wants to run the football and has rushed for 230 yards a game in their first 2 games. Plus, their offensive line is elite. They should push around this Illinois defensive front, which has not been good to start the season. And heading into this season, it seems like this would be a game that could be pretty close, but I think Penn State is a better team here. They're going to be able to run the ball effectively, and that's going to lead them to victory. Penn State wins this game by a score of 34-14. Moving on, we've got LSU at Mississippi State. This game could actually be really close. I could see Mississippi State getting the upset win here. They've been good so far. They're 2-0 coming off an overtime win over Arizona. Their defense has been good coming off a 4-interception game. Now, LSU had a big bounce-back game in their dominant win over Grambling last week, and I mean, it is what you expect. It was Grambling last week. But I could see this game going either way. I don't think it will be an easy road game for LSU, but they are the better team here, and will get the close win over Mississippi State, 34-27. Moving on, we've got Missouri hosting Kansas State. So this could be a lower-scoring game. Kansas State has allowed just 13 points combined in their first 2 games, and the Missouri defense is also very good. The differences between these 2 teams is on the offensive side of the ball. Kansas State has scored 43.5 points a game in their first 2 games, while Missouri is down under 30 at 29 points a game in their first 2. So Kansas State's got the much better offense. Numbers-wise, they've got an experienced quarterback in Will Howard, and I think they're just too good offensively for Missouri. And I've got Kansas State with the dominant win because I don't think Missouri will be able to get anything going offensively. Kansas State gets the win 31-10. Moving on, we've got Utah hosting Weber State. So this is an FCS-FBS matchup, but Weber State is one of the better FCS teams in the country. Utah will still be without starting quarterback Cam Rising as he continues to recover from a torn ACL. For Utah, they have Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson as their quarterbacks, who have been solid so far but not elite. But for Utah, even without Cam Rising, Utah is the better team here and will defeat the weaker FCS opponent. Utah wins 42-14. Next game, we've got Notre Dame hosting Central Michigan. Notre Dame has been elite so far this season. They've got another easy opponent before their big matchup against Ohio State next week. Notre Dame should get the win easily. Their offense has been great. Their defense is very good. Now, Notre Dame has had trouble containing dual-threat quarterbacks in the past, and Central Michigan quarterback Burt Emanuel Jr. is a dual-threat guy, as he leads Central Michigan in passing yards and rushing yards. But Notre Dame did a really good job of containing a mobile quarterback, Brendan Armstrong of NC State last week, and I think they should be able to contain Emanuel Jr. and hold the Central Michigan offense to very few points. Notre Dame dominates this week and beats Central Michigan by a score of 49-7 ahead of their big showdown against Ohio State next week. Moving on, we've got South Carolina visiting Georgia. So South Carolina has not been very good so far this season, especially offensively, and a big part of that is offensive line play, and that is going to be terrible for South Carolina. Quarterback Spencer Rattler was sacked 9 times in the season-opening loss to North Carolina. They also haven't been able to run the ball so far, as South Carolina averages just 1.5 yards a carry as a team, and a bad offensive line is going to be a nightmare against Georgia, which has an insane defensive front. As expected, Georgia's defense has been elite so far this season, and I think Georgia's defense will dominate this matchup, not allowing South Carolina to run the ball, making the South Carolina offense one-dimensional, and then getting a constant pressure on Spencer Rattler, so Georgia gets to win here in a dominant, really good game by their defense, 38-3. Next game, we've got Alabama visiting USF. So Alabama is coming off a loss to Texas, and it will be interesting to see how they respond. Alabama will also be making a quarterback change, benching Jalen Milroe for Notre Dame transfer Tyler Buckner. Now, Buckner has only started 3 games in his college career, but he could be good for Alabama. But whether Alabama gets a good quarterback play from Tyler Buckner or not, they should dominate this game against a not good South Florida team. Alabama wins easily 45-6. Moving on, we've got Oregon State hosting San Diego State. This is not a very good matchup for San Diego State. Their offense has been bad to start the season, especially their run game, which averages to 3.4 yards a carry against FBS opponents. And Oregon State's run defense has been great to start the season. They allow just 2 yards per carry and 51.5 rushing yards per game. So that is not a good matchup for San Diego State. I also don't think their defense will be able to stop a DJ Ubiangole-led Beavers offense, which has been quite good to start the season. Oregon State gets the win easily 38-10. Next game, we've got Tulsa hosting Oklahoma. So Tulsa faces a tough opponent for the second week in a row after they lost 43-10 to Washington, who shredded them through the air as the Huskies threw for 454 yards. Oklahoma should be able to throw the ball all over the field as well. Quarterback Dylan Gabriel has been good so far, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions to start the season, and Oklahoma gets the win very easily 52-13. Next game, we've got North Carolina hosting Minnesota. So this is a game that could go either way. North Carolina's 2-0, but it isn't the best 2-0, and are coming off an overtime win over App State, where they weren't amazing, but they did run the ball effectively. Both teams, I would expect to try to establish the run. As I mentioned, North Carolina ran for 319 yards a week ago, and Minnesota's also got a great ground game. Now, Minnesota's also got a great defense, which has allowed just 16 combined points in their first 2 games, and they also could be able to stop the Carolina run game, but I think Drake May is the difference in this game for North Carolina. He hasn't been amazing to start the season, but I think he's got a good enough game, and a pretty good game, as North Carolina gets the win here in a lower scoring game by a score of 27-17. Up next, we got Duke hosting Northwestern. So Northwestern actually hasn't been that bad to start the season, but they're still not very good. Northwestern's defense has been okay, but Duke is the significantly better team. They're not going to allow a Northwestern team, which is bad offensively, to get anything going on the offensive side of the ball. Duke wins easily 35-6. Up next, we got Western Michigan at Iowa. So this will probably be a lower scoring game because Iowa doesn't have a great offense, and their defense will hold Western Michigan to a very low point total because of their elite defense, and Western Michigan was also only able to muster 7 points last week against Syracuse. And while Iowa isn't a very good passing team, I would look for them to try to attack the pass defense of Western Michigan, which is a major weakness, allowing 9 yards per pass attempt. But I've got Iowa getting the win fairly easily by a score of 34-3. Up next, we got Western Kentucky visiting Ohio State. So this is the final game Ohio State has to figure it out before they visit Notre Dame next week, and they need to make sure they're focused on figuring it out this week and not looking ahead to Notre Dame next week, because Ohio State has played Indiana and Youngstown State and haven't scored above 40 points in either of those games. And they're also announced Kyle McCord is their starting quarterback. Their quarterback battle is officially over, even though McCord has started the first 2 games. He is officially their starting quarterback. But Ohio State gets the win here over Western Kentucky, but Western Kentucky should be able to put up some points. Ohio State wins 42-20, but needs to figure things out, and also can't get caught looking ahead to next week. Up next, we got Michigan State hosting Washington. So this game's going to be a blowout. Michigan State is a mess right now, and they face an elite Washington team that has an outstanding passing attack. Michigan State's pass defense has actually been quite good to start the season, but I don't think they're going to be any match for Michael Penix Jr. and this Washington offense, as Michael Penix Jr. has another monster game. Washington destroys. Michigan State wins by a score of 48-10. Moving on, we've got Northern Colorado visiting Washington State. So Washington State is coming off a big upset win over Wisconsin, and they need to avoid a letdown. But even if they have a slow start, they're playing Northern Colorado, a terrible FCS team. Washington State gets a dominant win, 52-3. Up next, we got North Carolina Central at UCLA. So North Carolina Central is an FCS team, but a pretty good FCS team, but I don't think they're going to be a match for UCLA, which is coming off a 35-10, a good win over San Diego State. UCLA wins easily 49-10. Moving on, we've got Tennessee at Florida. So this is a tricky game. I don't think Florida is all that good, but this game is in the Swamp, a place where Tennessee hasn't won in 20 years. And Tennessee is also coming off a game where they put up only 30 points against an FCS team in Austin Peay. Now, Tennessee has been able to run the ball very effectively, and I think that should carry over to this game as well. Even though Florida's numbers against the run are quite good to start the season, I still think Tennessee should be able to run the ball. I also would like to see Tennessee get their passing game going, and I think they do that and start to find their rhythm under Joe Milton at quarterback, and Tennessee gets the win here by a score of 38-20. Moving on, we've got Michigan hosting Bowling Green. So this is the final game for Michigan that Jim Harbaugh is suspended for, but they play another bad team. Michigan is the significantly better team here, and they will show it with a 45-3 win. Moving on, we've got Georgia Tech at Ole Miss. So Ole Miss is coming off a big win over Tulane, and their pass attack has been great to start the season. Quarterback Jackson Dart has 600 yards and 6 touchdowns in 2 games. Now, the Ole Miss run game, which should be good with star running back Quishon Judkins, has not been good to start the season, but I would like to see them try to establish the run, and I think they do that against the Georgia Tech defense that has allowed over 200 rushing yards a game to start the season. So I think Ole Miss puts together a dominant offensive performance and wins this one by a score of 49-17. Moving on, we've got Texas hosting Wyoming. So Texas is coming off a big upset win over Alabama, and they need to avoid a letdown against a Wyoming team that already has an upset win over Texas Tech in Week 1. Now, Wyoming is a decent team, but even if Texas starts slow, I think they're the much better team here, and Wyoming will not be able to keep up with the Texas offense. Texas gets the win here 38-17. Our second to last game is Hawaii visiting Oregon. This is another game that should be a blowout. Oregon has the highest scoring offense in the country after 2 games. They score 59.5 points a game, and Hawaii's defense has really struggled to start the year, giving up 36 points a game. Plus the Hawaii offense isn't good. This one should get ugly quickly. Oregon wins 56-13. And the final game is a rivalry game, Colorado State at Colorado. This should not be close. Colorado's offense has been insane so far. That trend continues, and they dominate this game, winning 49-13. But those are my Week 3 college football predictions. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my predictions, disagree, and why. But thank you for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.